Karl Rominger is with us from Rominger Law Associates, and Eric Vorodi from About Trees. Well, this is a little shop talk from my end of the woods, so to speak, and it is that I believe that our industry has done a great job of convincing folks that trees are valuable and important. The problem that I see, and Eric and I are always kind of arguing about this, is that it tends to put in people's mind the notion that trees are worth considerably more than they are. One way to consider that is, gold plating on the faucets in your house. How much value does that add? But the other thing is that, the tree, if it wasn't on your property, how much would that affect the value of the real estate? Unlike a car, there's no blue book really for the value of trees. There's some complicated schemes for valuing trees, and I think there's at least 3 that I can think of. But the term that I like and seems to have some traction, at least among the people I talk to, is that the value of the tree is its contributory value to the value of the property.
The problem with that is, and I think it's true, but the problem with it is that means it's possible the tree is worthless. It's also possible that the tree is particularly valuable, or that one tree on the land is, because it's the same as when you said, like, the gold-plated faucets. It's like putting new tires on your car. I always get this when somebody has a car wreck. They're always upset because they just put new tires on, and they think that's going to enhance the value of the car. But whether they're new tires or bald tires, there's no price adjustment on the value of the car. And so I can see scenarios where you would argue that whether that tree is there or not, it doesn't really enhance the value of the property because there's 18 other trees in the backyard, let's say. So its contribution is so minimal as to almost be de minimis.
And so it begs the question. I mean, have you ever had an experience where, folks came to you and were convinced that this tree was, I call them the mortgage lifters. If you get compensated the way these people think they ought to be, they'll be able to pay off their mortgage and they'll be off to Disney World.
Yeah, I haven't had anybody ever give me a particular value on a tree. I mean, I hear things like, well, it's a black walnut, therefore, they seem
right. If I made that into veneer wood, it would be worth thousands of dollars.
Right. That's the plan. And of course, who knows whether the quality of it is, and who knows whether they were actually going to do that. And I don't know. Can you take a black walnut out of somebody's backyard and make nice veneer wood out of it?
You can, but that's another case where people often overestimate that because they're thinking about a situation where somebody they know that had a number of black walnuts that had been grown for a long time in great condition, and a forester came and wanted those trees. Now, when you switch that to a one-off situation, I got one tree in my yard that's a tricky takedown that's going to require $2,000 just to get the tree on the ground. Well, if it was worth $2,000, but you had to spend $2,000 to take it down, what's it worth?
So let me ask you, just generally speaking, for the listeners' benefit, when you get to look at trees on property, do you find that typically your value is less than what the homeowner or the property owner thinks of, or, and look, I can see you smiling through all that.
Yeah, because sometimes that's the case. But interestingly enough, I have a case right now where it appears that a landscaper may have used the wrong herbicide and killed a bunch of trees on somebody's property. And the woman only wanted to make sure that she could get the trees taken down at no cost to her. And I said, well, you understand that those trees have some value, don't you? And she said, well, who's going to want to come and get those trees for lumber? I said, no, it's not the lumber. I said, it's your property, your house, your yard, your landscape, that those trees contributed value to your landscape. And she had not even thought of it in those terms.
So do you think you're doing her a service? Because if I'd gotten there first, I would have said, yeah, you're right. You probably want to start over here.
Ultimately, she's the client. She can decide how aggressively she wants to push it. And if I can help her to at least get the cost of the removals and the stump grinding, and she's happy with that, then great. That's what she wants. That's what I'm there to help her with.
So if you guys showed up in my office together, the first question I'd ask you is, does the contractor who's negligent have insurance? And if not, is he or she married? Right? And that goes to, if there's insurance, there's going to be some money to tap and somebody to work with that will likely pay. If the person doesn't have insurance, and just because they say they're insured and bonded, by the way, doesn't mean they have the right kind of insurance, because the townships only require liability and workers' comp and things like that, not necessarily things that cover negligence. And there's a lot of exclusions even in policies that do. But back to the point, the other famous thing that a contractor can do is sign the contract with you, but he owns the big bully truck and the house and everything are owned by husband and wife, and therefore not reachable assets. So you might be able to get a judgment against the contractor, but no money. and that affects the settlement value.
That's something. Glad you brought that up. That's something. Can you explain that for at least in Pennsylvania, if your assets are held if your assets are held jointly with your spouse, that as a contractor, it protects you in a large way from being sought after.
It does. And so my joke always, I tell clients, they say, well, what can I do with if they're a contractor, I tell them, never have your wife sign the contract. If it's the client who's going to get the work done, I say, if your contractor says he's really good and never had a problem, look him in the eye and say, have your wife sign too. Because that's a real guarantee. Because now you can reach their personal assets. We have this concept called tenants in the entirety, and the marital property belongs to the marriage, no longer to the husband and wife. So you can only reach the marriage if husband and wife sign. So if you think back through all your years, notice how every time you went to the bank, they always want the wife's signature or the husband's signature, even if it's just a loan for one of you or it's a transaction on a piece of property, because they want to be able to reach the marital entity. Pennsylvania, I think Ohio, and maybe one or two other states still have that